Welcome to the Chronicles of Leicester. Today I'm at the Walla Walla Symphony office with Ed Dixon, who's the orchestra personnel manager as well as principal cello player for the Walla Walla Symphony. And I've known Ed for as long as I've been playing horn, so this is a super fun interview to get to do, and I'm excited to get to learn more about how the symphony runs and what it can do for young musicians.
Right, let's do it.
Yeah, okay. All right, so first, what led you to the Walla Walla Symphony? Like, where did you work leading up to here?
My career was spent as a college professor.
Oh, yeah.
So what brought me to Washington, I was back east, but what brought me to Washington was teaching at Central Washington University in the 1980s. And then I left Central and came to Whitman College here in Walla Walla. And that was in 1990. And I immediately connected with the Walla Walla Symphony. The first year I was here, they had a principal cello, a young lady, Karen Thompson, who was connected with the Walla Walla University here in the Walla Walla area. She did it for 1 year, and then she went off to graduate school or someplace. And so I started in 1991, and I've been principal cello ever since. With the same conductor, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Jakob Bergman has been here even before I came. He came in 1987. So we've had a working relationship for, going on close to 30 years now, and it's been terrific.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love Yaki, so
Yeah.
it's great.
Yeah.
And then, did you immediately go into the administrative orchestra personnel side of things, too?
That was an interesting and nice coincidence. When I retired from teaching, that very same spring that I retired, the longtime manager of the symphony, Sharon Thompson, violinist, also decided that that was going to be her last year with the symphony. So the opening was there for someone who knew how to run orchestras, and I had been the orchestra conductor at Whitman College,
really?
so I knew all about running orchestras. And so I said, well, I can do that. So I contacted my friends here at the symphony, said, well, I'm open to doing it, and so they said, sure. Someone with experience, that sounds good. And so I've been doing it ever since. It's my 10th year.
Oh, cool. Dang, yeah.
Yeah, time flies.
Yeah, it's been, the orchestra seems really well run and organized, so you're all doing a good job. So.
Thank you, yeah. Well, I mean, it's a constant, you have to constantly try to stay ahead of the game.
Yeah, I bet.
And there are stretches in our season where we do one concert a month, and many orchestras do that, but our staff is such, and our concerts are big enough that really presses our staff to work, because you're working on more than one concert at the same time. And there have been a few occasions where I'm talking to a musician about one concert and saying the dates of another concert, and oh, wait a minute, that's not a good feeling.
Yeah, probably hard not to get your wires crossed like that.
It's very easy to do. You got all these things going, and one concert per month. It's easy to get them mixed up. So
yeah, but they're all fantastic, really fun, and we'll get to what some of the concerts have been in the last season later in the interview. But so you mentioned Jakob Bergman,
right.
How he's been here forever.
Yeah.
So would you mind touching on a little bit of the history of the orchestra?
So in 1907, the symphony got started as a music club, local musicians. And the thing with Walla Walla is we have two 4-year colleges and a community college and public school system. So there are a lot of musicians connected with the education here in Walla Walla who are interested in also playing their instrument, and continuing performing. So, and that's been the case for many, many decades. So Walla Walla Symphony likes to say it's the longest continuously operating orchestra west of the Mississippi, so it's very distinguished. There's never been a year, even during wars, world wars and whatnot, that it hasn't presented concerts.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And a large part of that is because of Whitman College, Walla Walla University, the various wonderful schools we have here. A long string of distinguished conductors. In the early days, they were connected with the colleges, But since the 1980s and with Jakob Bergman, we've had independent conductors coming from out of the area. Maestro Bergman comes from New York City.
Oh yeah.
So, and that's been the last 30 years. But the orchestra has had musicians in it. When I first started in 1991, there were still some players who had been playing in it since the 1940s.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's the kind of continuity. We still have players in it now who started as high school students in the 1950s. So it's tremendous loyalty, tremendous sense of continuity, and just handing the legacy of the orchestra over from one generation to the next.
And that's incredible.
Yeah, and as a personnel manager, I single out talented young people, you were one, to get them playing an orchestral experience as high school students.
Yeah, that was...
So, I mean, I think that's part of the orchestra's mission. It always has been. And it continues to be. If a young person plays well enough and is strong enough that they can contribute to the concert, we may have players who are in their 70s, and we have players who are 16 and 17. So it's great.
Yeah, such a wide variety of people, all different backgrounds coming together in one
that's
place.
That's the essence and the beauty of community orchestras.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, and if you would like to know more about this Walla Walla Symphony history, you can go to their website. So, along with the Walla Walla Symphony, you run a whole bunch of programs alongside it, like the Rock and Roll Camp,
Right.
Heartbeat, the Symphony Youth Orchestra. Lending library, all kinds of things.
Well, for any community orchestra, the youth programs that are associated with that adult organization are very important. I think that's every community feels that training and promoting the growth of young musicians is part of their audience, along with also the growth of audiences and bringing music to young people and that sort of thing. In addition to what you just mentioned, we also have what we call our family and public school concerts during the year. So outreach to the youth is extremely important. The Rock and Roll Camp, we were talking about that. That's a kind of an unusual camp for a classical symphony to sponsor.
Yeah.
But it's something that's we've done now for 7 or 8 years, and it brings different kids who don't play violin, don't play the flute. They love music, they sing, they pluck guitars, they hit drums, and they come for a week for a fun 5 days of putting together groups, and sometimes they come with a pre-existing group, and at the end, Friday night, they put on a concert. It's a rock concert out in the park. Yeah, they get a pretty good crowd, and it's a lot of fun. So that's the Rock Camp. Our youth orchestra is about 10 years old. It's had different chapters in its history, but the most recent chapter is about 10 years old, and it's presently conducted by Dr. Paul Luongo, who is the orchestra director at Whitman College, and they rehearse at Whitman College. So we have that nice college connection, and it really benefits the orchestra. And it's been growing and growing. There must be 50, 60 young people in the orchestra now.
Yeah.
It's a big group. It's getting too big for the stage.
And yeah, that's bigger than when I was in it. So.
Yeah, it's grown a lot. Even the last 3 or 4 years, it's gone from 40 musicians to 50 musicians to 60 musicians. I'm a cello, and I'm delighted to see there's sometimes 11, 12 young cellists sitting in there, as many cellos as there are violins. And but they do 3 or 4 concerts a year. It's very popular. It's tremendous. They rehearse on Monday evenings, and it brings a full orchestra experience to the public school string students and wind students who generally just have a string orchestra or a wind orchestra. Here they get full orchestra experience.
Yeah. And that's where terrific. I got to perform with an orchestra for the first time, like as a soloist. So. Right.
And big cities like Seattle have tremendous youth orchestra programs with 3 or 4 different tiers of orchestras. But smaller community like Walla Walla, we feel very fortunate to have such a strong youth program right here. But we have a strong public school music program, and so that helps a tremendous amount. And then we get some students from surrounding communities, the Tri-Cities area. Students come over. I have one of my private cello students comes over from the Tri-Cities and plays here. So
Oh, cool.
there's some outreach,
Mhm.
you know. Yeah. We have a lending library, and it's not lending of music; it's lending of actual instruments.
Wow.
Because the schools in the area, there's always a shortage of violins, violas, cellos, for the number of students who want to start learning. And if they can have an instrument, borrow an instrument, and not have to pay a rental fee on an instrument, it's a big help for some families.
Yeah.
So we've had that for years, ever since I've worked with the symphony. And we got a grant to get it started. We purchased a lot of violins, and it's a handful to keep that organized, to keep up on
I
it.
bet.
You know, we get a call, my G string broke, my A string broke, my bow hair fell out. You know, there's a lot of stuff. But fortunately, we have very good repairmen right here in town who can handle things and take care of repairs for us. And they check the instruments in and out just like a book at the library.
That's good.
Yeah.
Because I know sometimes at the public schools too, not only are there not enough of the instruments,
Right,
but
right.
quality instruments
Yeah.
actually work.
Right. Any instrument that is used in a student situation's gonna get a pretty good workout.
Yeah.
It's gonna get a pretty good treatment. So it's nice to have, and we're always refreshing our supply.
Mhm.
We're buying some new cellos even this month for next year and things like that. So that's good.
Yeah, those are
But anyway,
amazing.
it's a great service. Not every orchestra has an instrument lending library.
Because I don't think a lot of people consider that with local orchestras, they're not just an orchestra, but they're all of these things that
Oh,
lie
yeah.
just beneath. So
Oh yeah, especially with the young people.
yeah,
Young
it's
people.
very
And you know, the orchestras apply for grants and grant organizations. They're very much strong in supporting young programs for youth and whatnot. So that's a good double benefit from having youth programs is you get grant money.
yeah.
So it's helpful. It's very helpful. You know. Our big family and public school concerts are really the shining part of what we do for young people, especially the school concerts. We bus in kids, fourth, fifth graders from schools all around, not just Walla Walla, but all around the area, and play 2 concerts for about 1,200 students in each concert. So we fill our
Wow.
auditorium. Yeah, we have a 1,200 seat auditorium. We fill it up twice
Mhm.
on a school morning. Kids get out of school, and a lot of those students have not only have they never heard an orchestra before, they've never been in a big auditorium before.
Yeah.
So just the whole thing about it is very exciting, and you can just feel the energy when you sit down to play. You're getting ready to play, and the whole 1,200 young people
Mhm.
are just buzzing, and they're just so excited and happy. They just can't wait, you know. So
Yeah, youth concerts are always some of my favorites to play.
yeah,
So
and
you
then
can hear the
last
kids yelling out.
3 or 4 years, we've done programs from the Carnegie Institute in New York City that
Oh,
has
really?
an education program. They've put together a series of the orchestra sings, swings, moves, all these different programs
Mhm.
that have narration, singing, audience participation. The students learn to play on recorders and different things, parts of the concert, even before they come to the concert. So when we're there and the narrator says, now we're going to play this piece and get out your instruments, the whole auditorium can play along with the
Wow.
orchestra. Yeah, it's terrific. It's really fun.
Man, that's even more than back
That's
when I was
above and beyond
doing
just
so.
sitting and enjoying it. Now
Yeah.
you got to get to play.
Yeah, that's great for young
Yeah.
kids who don't know
Yeah.
much about that kind of thing.
That's
So,
right.
yeah, thank you. Those are all amazing programs. You kind of already answered this, but have you always had like a strong connection with local orchestras? Like, was there one when you were growing up that you particularly
Yeah, so I
enjoyed?
grew up in Southern California,
Okay.
in Long Beach, and there are many community orchestras in that large metropolitan area. And my first experience was with a local orchestra near my town in Downey, California, the Downey Symphony,
Mhm.
still operating, I'm sure. I was an 8th grader when I got into that orchestra.
Really?
Yeah, and I had auditioned for the conductor, and he was an Italian conductor, Mario Coyote. I don't know if any of you know Mario Coyote, but he was, here he had a long, distinguished career as a conductor,
Mm-hmm.
and he's doing auditions, and this little 8th grader shows up with his cello, with his mother, and he listened to me. And he let me come and sit in the back,
Mm-hmm.
Very first piece we played was Tchaikovsky's Romeo and Juliet Overture.
Wow.
My eyes just I took the music to my private teacher at the time. She says, well, I think you can help them on that pretty melody.
Yeah.
But that was my initiation,
Mm-hmm.
to community orchestras as an 8th grader. And then ever since then, I was in 4, 5, 6 different ones in Southern California.
Wow. Yeah.
I was down there all the way through college at USC.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to taught in North Carolina with the Greensboro Symphony. That's the only orchestra when I first started teaching that I didn't participate in, but they had a very nice orchestra. But when I was teaching at Central, I played with the Yakima Symphony. I was principal cello there back in the 80s, and then moving here, I've played with all the different orchestras here. I'm principal cello with the Mid-Columbia Symphony in Tri-Cities also.
Mm-hmm.
Walla Walla, I've played Washington, Idaho Symphony, Oregon East Symphony, all different orchestras, Wenatchee Symphony, all around. So yeah.
So.
If you're a teacher in education and want to continue to perform, you're not playing every week in the Seattle Symphony. You're playing, and you're sort of helping out, but it also helps you. You play all this wonderful music, all the various community orchestras around and about, and you get to know everyone too, which is one of the reasons why when I started doing personnel for the symphony here, I had been playing all these orchestras, so I knew all the various players in the region, so it was a big help.
I bet. You mentioned this before we started, but you're the personnel manager as well as the principal cello player, so as a member of the Walla Walla Symphony for quite some time, what would you say is your favorite part about being in an orchestra like this?
Well, just the great programs that we do, great repertoire. We're doing this upcoming season, we're doing Mahler 4th Symphony in May.
So glad I'm going to be gone.
Yeah, I wish you were here for that. We need the 6 horns. We do Nutcracker, we're doing Swan Lake Ballet coming up in October. So we do wonderful programs. We do contemporary programs. We're doing a string orchestra chamber program at Powerhouse Theater with a guest pianist this coming November. The Yakov Bergman and Leah Wilson Velasco, our CEO, put their heads together and come up with very creative programming, very interesting programming every season. And us musicians were the benefit of that. We're going to talk about great solos, but that's part of it as well, So, as a performing cellist, this is something I like to do. Playing orchestra is just one of the ways I perform on the cello. I do chamber music and solo as well. But I feel very fortunate to be in a community that has an excellent auditorium at Whitman College, Gordner Auditorium to play in, beautiful acoustics, fine conductor, Yakov Bergman, coming from New York, he's first rate, and all these wonderful musicians. It's a very fine orchestra for, everyone says it's such a good orchestra for a town that size. Well, it's true, it is. Yeah. The greater Walla Walla area has always been around 30,000 citizens ever since I've been here in the early 90s, and it's not much bigger than that now. It's changed a lot because of the whole wine industry.
Yeah, that came in.
Feeling of the town has changed to a certain extent, but the size hasn't changed that much, and so we still have this super orchestra.
Yeah, I love playing with the orchestra. It's always been a great time.
Yeah, it's a great experience.
Yeah, and then continuing to talk about some of the musicians. So are the musicians that play in the orchestra like people who play music as a hobby for the most part, or do some of them have like careers that extend way back?
Right, yeah. Well, all the above. We have the way the breakdown of the orchestra is. Our string sections tend to be much more local, just because there are more string players in a given area than winds and brass, and many of those players are teachers, either privately or through the colleges, or have been teachers, or at some point, or they've just always been players, and they do other things, but it's a very important hobby for them. The winds and brass section, because they're all primarily soloists, Maestro Bergman has cultivated wind players from here, there, and everywhere, many of them from our area large universities like Washington State University or the University of Idaho. They're close enough, that's driving distance here, so we get a lot of their top-notch faculty to do flute and do clarinet and French horn and all the different important instruments like that. And then we have some freelancers. Principal trumpet comes from Spokane, and principal oboe from Portland, and principal trombone is a former faculty member right here at Whitman College, Dave Glenn. So it's a real mix, but the winds and brass tend to be faculty member professionals. The strings tend to be a real mix of community and teachers and some professionals.
Okay.
So that's the way it breaks down.
Yeah, one of my friends plays trombone that I went on a trip to Australia with for a program I did. But I remember he was like, "You play in an orchestra with Dave Glenn?" And that was the first time I was like, oh, so they get like really good people in these orchestras.
Absolutely.
So.
Big reputations.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It makes for a really great group. So.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing about our orchestra, I always kid people, is that we start each concert cycle with 2 string rehearsals all by themselves, strings. So we have 2 of those rehearsals, and then all the orchestra comes together on the Sunday before our concert. And even after 2 string rehearsals, the strings are hard pressed to keep up the winds when they come in ready to play, because those people are so strong and they're just so great. We're still working hard just to keep up with them. So
yeah, those wind and brass sections are a blast to play in.
Yeah.
So great experience for me before I went off to college.
Yeah. We've lost Dean Kravick though. You've heard that.
Yes, it breaks my heart.
Principal Horn's off to Hong Kong to start a music school.
But amazing for him. So
yeah, great
he's gonna do great.
Great experience.
Let's see. Oh, so then back to the kind of programs. So you've had just this last season guest artists like Canadian Brass, the Villalobos brothers, some fantastic opera singers.
Right.
I know you had Project Trio a few years ago come in.
Yeah, sure.
So how do you go about getting huge names like that to come play in a relatively small area?
To play with the symphony, most of those soloists are people that Jakob Bergman knows personally.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Sometimes in the case of if we have a program that requires singers, he'll scout out and about and audition singers. But most of the instrumental soloists he knows personally before he invites them to play. So that
cool.
comes directly from him, and of course he knows musicians everywhere. Leah Wilson Velasco, our CEO, has started a series of special presentation concerts, you might call them, by the symphony of internationally recognized groups like the Canadian Brass or the King Singers. The Vienna Choir Boys came.
Yeah.
These are programs that stand alone without the orchestra actually, but they're sponsored by the symphony. So those groups, of course, it's just a question of whether they're in our area and whether we can book them, So, but they're famous in their own rights. But all of these wonderful soloists that play with the orchestra, there's usually some kind of connection to our music director.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's the one that finds and invites people.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So of course he's back east in New York, so we've had New York artists come. Ken Poplowski is a fantastic jazz clarinetist from New York that played a few years back, and Yaki collects talent.
Yeah.
He knows talent, he collects it.
Yeah, he's got to be really good at networking to get
Oh yeah, he knows everybody.
all that. And then our last question for the interview. What kind of advice do you have for young musicians like myself who are working on building a career, and how do you feel a local orchestra can contribute to building up?
Yeah, well, like I say, if it's an orchestra that gives grade school, high schoolers, even younger, opportunities to get their feet wet, playing with adults, playing real repertoire, that's a tremendous experience for them before they go off to college. That's a real benefit. And then we include our local college students as well
Mhm.
in our concerts. Students from Whitman, students from Walla Walla University. They audition when they come to school. They're from all over different areas, but they come here to college and audition for me. And we generally, if we have openings in a substitute situation, get them in there, get them playing.
Mhm.
Especially an instrument like viola. We've had a number of violists help us out where we need players, and the college students are a tremendous asset for us as well to help the symphony out. So not only are they playing in their college orchestra, but they're also getting the benefit of playing in a very fine community orchestra. So that's a good experience. And then, if they do have aspirations to be professional musicians, it's all part of building a resume.
Yeah.
The resume and experience, and every step that you take if you're going on to graduate school someplace. The faculty, the professors are going to look at everything you've done up to that point to see how extensive your background is, and it helps a lot to say that you've been part of a really fine adult orchestra.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's everyone's career is steps up the ladder, and every step supports the next step, supports the next
Mhm.
one, and I have a daughter who's a singer, and she's taking one step at a time to do what she needs to do. Everyone builds their career that way. I certainly did. The experiences I had in my grade school years, starting with the Downey Symphony in the 8th grade and all the orchestras I played through high school, led to my college career and on and on. So that's the way it is. It's a stepping stone.
Yeah, for sure. I know one of the main reasons I got into BYU was because my horn professor saw that I had an unusual amount of orchestra experience for
Exactly.
someone my age.
Right.
Because I was playing in Walla Walla, Mid-Columbia, Oregon East, all these
Yes.
different places. And
So
he
you-
said, this is someone who has experience in what she wants to do when we're interested. So
Yeah, bring your skills and your private lesson abilities, and then you also bring your experiences playing with other musicians. These are all parts of your total resume, and if a person is very well rounded that way, has good private teaching, can play well, has good experience, that's what everyone's looking for, really,
Yeah.
for the next step. That's a complete package, so that's terrific.
yeah, well, thank you very much, Ed.
My pleasure.
Yeah, and if you would like to know more about the Walla Walla Symphony, you can Google Walla Walla Symphony, go to their website, learn more about their programs, make a donation if you're feeling inspired by some of the programs that you learned about today. And
Buy season tickets.
yeah, come visit, come go to a
Yes.
concert. Some amazing programs coming in this next season. Great, well thank you very much, Ed.
Thank you, Kylie. It's fun.